Good morning, everybody. We'll be in Matthew chapter 13 this morning, starting off. And, as always, it's a wonderful day to be here in the house of the Lord, to be in His presence, to come study His Word with our brothers and sisters, get a little bit closer to this wonderful God we serve. And finally got a little rain, cooled things off. It's a double blessing there. But as always, it's a blessing and honor to come into His house. And again, we'll be in Matthew chapter 13. The same day went Jesus out of the house and sat by the seaside, and great multitudes were gathered together unto Him, so that He went into a ship and sat, and the whole multitude stood on the shore. So there's so many people around Him, He had to separate Himself there, and He's out just off the edge of the shore in a boat. This crowd had gotten so large, and they come to see Him. So He's going to be talking about some parables this morning about the mysteries of the kingdom of heaven. Verse 3, And He spake many things unto them in parables, saying, Behold, a sower went forth to sow. So we got a man here that's going to sow in his field, put his seeds out. Of course, as we read on, we realize that this is Christ, and He's trying to build the church here. And when He sowed, some seeds fell by the wayside, and the fowls came and devoured them up. Some fell upon stony places, where they had not much earth, and forthwith they sprung up, because they had no deepness of earth. And when the sun was up, they were scorched, and because they had no root, they withered away. And some fell among thorns, and the thorns sprung up and choked them. But others fell into good ground and brought forth fruit, some 100-fold, some 60-fold, some 30-fold. He says, verse 9, Who hath ears to hear, let him hear. So he's saying all these seeds was out, and it was put out there, and it was good seed, but it fell in different places, and it had different results of that. He's going to go on and explain that in depth here in a little bit, so I'm not going to try to improve on that because it's red rotten, so it's not going to get any better than Jesus Himself explaining it, but we'll go on with that here in a minute as He explains it. And the disciples came and said unto Him, Why speakest thou unto them in parables? So, the disciples were like, when it's just us and we're talking, you're telling us all these things and it's just straightforward and you're pouring this out onto us. But He answered and said unto them, Because it is given unto you to know the mysteries of the kingdom of heaven, but to them it is not given. So He's saying, you've been prepared. I'm preparing you to understand this. And He says they're not ready yet. We're having to do a little more work with them and get them built up. You've been with me and I'm pouring out to you. You have a different work to do. You have an understanding. You've got that wisdom I've been sharing with you. They're going to get it, but they're not ready yet. We have to do a little more work. We need to do some more sowing and watering to get them up. For whosoever hath, to him shall be given, and he shall have more abundance. But whosoever hath not, from him shall be taken away, even that he hath. So He's saying, you all are here, you have the right heart, you're seeking also. So it's another reason why you understand and why you're here. That's like these other people aren't ready. They're hearing this word, but they're not listening. They're not absorbing it. They're not ready. They're not prepared, like you guys. Therefore speak I to them in parables, because they see not, and hearing they hear not, neither do they understand. So, that whole goes back to that whole time, when, you're speaking and people are hearing what you're saying, but they're not actually listening to what you're saying. Or they see something, but they're not really looking at it, looking into it, trying to figure out what it is. And they don't have that understanding. And that's what Christ is saying here. It's like they're listening, but they're not, or they're hearing me, but they're not listening. They see me, but they're not seeing who I really am. They're not getting past all the miracles and the things that He's doing, and they're not putting that together and saying, okay, well, there's this wonderful guy here, and he's doing all these healings, he's teaching all these things. And it's like, so, he's just a great guy, he's a prophet, but they're not understanding who he really is, that He is the Son of God, that he is the Messiah, he's the Lord and Savior, and he's come to, to be the King of Kings and Lord of Lords, but the world's not ready. They've not received him yet. They don't understand yet who he really is. They're not putting all this together that, it could only be Jesus doing these things. And so they're not understanding. Verse 14, and in them is fulfilled the prophecy of Esaias, which is Isaiah, which saith, by hearing ye shall hear, and shall not understand, and seeing ye shall see, and shall not perceive. So, this was talked about in the Old Testament, that they would be ones that would, be able to see Christ and hear him, but they wouldn't understand, they wouldn't comprehend, it wouldn't fall on them the weight of actually who he really is. They wouldn't have understanding. They would just think he was some great guy, another prophet. They didn't recognize him as the Son of God. For this people's heart is wax gross, and their ears are dull of hearing, and their eyes they have closed, lest at any time they should see with their eyes, and hear with their ears, and should understand with their heart, and should be converted, I should heal them, or should have healed them. Or I should heal them. So again, he's saying, it's like at any time, they could actually look and see me. They could seek me. They could actually listen to what I'm saying and hear me. And it says they would understand in their heart. That's the difference there. It's like, that the ones that understood, the ones that get it, those that find Christ, their heart changes. They seek him with their heart. It's not their mind. It's not their flesh. It's like their heart seeks Christ. And then that understanding comes, and then it says they can be converted, and then he would heal them. So that's when we think today here. It's like, are we searching with him with our mind? Are we searching with him with our flesh? Or are we searching with him with our heart? Because our heart's the key there. We can try to figure out who he is in our minds and maybe get confused or maybe get jealous like some of the Pharisees and the Sadducees and the rulers of the time. They got jealous of the things he was doing because they were carnally looking at him still. They were thinking about, who is this? How's he doing these magic tricks? How can we learn to do these things or whatever it is that they were doing? They were carnally looking for him. But he's saying here, if you want to find Christ, if you want to find God, you're going to have to search with your heart. That's where the understanding is going to come from. The Spirit's going to come to your heart. It's going to change your mind also, but your heart is the key here. The heart is what's going to truly be able to see Christ because he was the epitome of love. And so that love has to go through the heart. So again, it says, if we seek him and we look and we hear, we let that settle down, we let it get past our brain, we let it sink down into our hearts, then it says that we can understand with our heart, we can be converted and we'll be healed. Most of course, that's going to be, accepting that blood of Christ. That's going to be, again, washed clean. The Spirit's going to enter into us, regenerate us, give us that new birth. We're going to be reborn again, and we can be healed and made new. But we have to get into our hearts, as we have to separate that, from the worldly things and look with spiritual eyes. We have to hear with spiritual ears and let our heart absorb all this to where we can have that understanding and be saved. But blessed are your eyes, for they see, and your ears, for they hear. So he's saying, you all understand. You see me. You know who I am. You hear me. You hear. You're listening. You're seeking. You're giving me your whole heart, and therefore you have understanding. For verily I say unto you, that many prophets and righteous men have desired to see those things which ye see, and have not seen them, and to hear those things which ye hear, and have not heard them. Of course, this is going back to all the Old Testament prophets that, that served God, sought him, and, that they were longing for that day to see that, God was going to send his son, and he was going to be that great conquering king and take over and turn this world upside down and return, Israel to prominence and power, and that God would rule the world and have his power and authority again. They looked for that. All those old-time prophets, they longed for that, but it wasn't their time. They were in their time to set up, to predict this, and to do all the things. God has his timetable, and it's perfect. And he does things exactly when it needs to be done. And those prophets were there in their time when they were supposed to be, and they did their jobs to set this up. And then Christ came at the exact moment in time when God wanted him to. But they longed to see him. David was excited when, that God revealed to him that that Jesus was going to come from his seed, and he was going to be a great grandfather to Christ, and he was excited about that. And the prophets, Daniel and Ezekiel and all those that prophesied about all the things that were going to come to pass in the future, they longed to see that moment come, but it wasn't in their lifetime. It wasn't then. And that's something that we can look forward to and be excited, because it may happen in our time. We may actually get to see this. I'm not going to say for sure. We don't know God's timing, but, we study this word and it's lining up. It could be any moment. It could happen at any time, and if it's not us, it could be definitely our children or grandchildren. But it could very well be us. We need to be prepared for that. We have to be seeking Him. We have to be looking with spiritual eyes and listening with spiritual ears and a spiritual heart, seeking Him and in seeking others and getting them ready and getting them prepared for His return, because it could be any time now. And we might be able to see what all these old-time prophets wanted to see. But Christ was telling them, the disciples that were there with Him, He said, you all see me, you hear me, I'm here before you. You can reach out and lay your hand in my hand. And it's like, what would have all those prophets before have done? What would they have gave up or sacrificed to been able to have that privilege? And He's like, so you all are here and you hear me. Going on, verse 18. Hear ye therefore the parable of the sower. So He's going to explain to them now and say, this is what I meant by this. When anyone heareth the word of the kingdom, and understandeth it not, then cometh the wicked one, and catcheth away that which was sown in his heart. This is he which receives seed by the wayside. So, this is talking about the church here. This is talking about the world. This is talking about the kingdom of God coming. That this word is getting taught. It's getting preached. It's out there. There's people out there, and they're speaking this word. This was Christ speaking the word. And some people heard it, and they didn't receive it. They didn't hear it. They didn't understand. They didn't comprehend it. And that seed fell to the earth and was never covered up. And it says the birds came and ate, the fowls came and picked up all those seeds, so they didn't get rooted down. Well, that's the devil coming in. That's people that work for the devil. He has people that work for him also that have sold out to him. They're up to mischief and trying to destroy the kingdom, and they come and distract. The distractions of the world, they distracted you, and that seed didn't take hold, and so it didn't ever take root, didn't grow. It's people that hear and reject the word. They never try to receive it. They don't do anything with it, and they move on. But he that received the seed into stony places, the same as he that heareth the word, and anon with joy received it. Yet hath he not root in himself, but dureth for a while. For when tribulation or persecution ariseth because of the word, by and by he is offended. So this is somebody that heard the word. It's like, hey, that sounds good. I kind of like it. But they kept it in their head and never let it sink down into their hearts. They didn't let it take root down deep inside where they were. And so, when the sun came and was warm and was root, they didn't have roots to pull up that water out of the ground, which would be the Spirit, which is this word, which is truth, to strengthen them. And so they withered up and died. So this is people that hear the word. They like the idea of it, but they never let it sink fully into their hearts. They never fully give in fully to God and fully turn their hearts over and become His and start working for Him and seeking Him with all that they have. They just kind of halfway go in. So then when trouble comes, tribulations come, trials come, the world stands up against them. They have no root. They have no strength to stand, and they stumble and fall, and they perish. So they're not truly fully converted. They didn't get that full born-again experience. They didn't get full of the Spirit, and they didn't get converted and reborn, and they wouldn't draw strength. They were only halfway in. It didn't sink into the roots of their heart like we talked about before. So when that, like I said, those people, it's like they're fine for a while. They may look good. It may seem like they're all right. But then the first time that sign of trouble comes, there's any kind of thing, they fall right back into the earth and they're lost. He also that receives seed among the thorns is he that heareth the word, and the care of this world and the deceitfulness of riches choke the word, and he becometh unfruitful. So then we've got people that come in, they start to come in, they hear it, they're trying their work, they're trying to do the things that they need to do. They're working, they're trying to grow, they're trying to learn, but then they get distracted. Maybe it's pride, maybe it's vanity, maybe it's the thought that they can get riches and they start working and they realize that if I just kind of avoid this topic, or maybe if I work this way with it, I'm not going to offend people so that my fame and my power, my riches can grow. This may be these false prophet type people. They come in with good intentions at first, but the world lures them away. Pride lures them away. Maybe it's like, look at all the things I've done now. I've built this church. I've built this, and I've done so many things. And they forget that, we can do nothing without Christ. We got to have God in the middle of all this. If we're going to do any kind of work, any kind of building in the kingdom, it's like He uses us. We're the tools. We're the vessels that He fills and uses. It's like He works through us. We don't master Him and bottle Him up and use Him to work for us. That's not how it goes. We have to remember that we can't do nothing of ourselves, but through Christ we can do everything because He strengthens us. So these are the people that get full of themselves. They get lured away. The fame, the power, the money distracts them, and they lose their way. And they start doing things that the world enjoys. This is going to be some of these false churches that we see today that accept anything. It's like, well, as long as you come in and you're being true to who you are inside yourself, then God's going to understand that and you'll be fine. And that's all lies and it's garbage. And that's what this is saying here. It's like the thorns come in, the weeds come in, and it chokes out the word and becomes unfruitful, and it dies, it withers away. It may look good on the outside, but when you cut into that fruit, it's rotten and it's dirty and it's dead. So that's what this is talking about here. It's like that you start off with good intentions, but you lose your way. And how do you keep that way? Well, you got to make sure that you're praying and that you're seeking Him. You're studying this Word and you're studying the truth. And when people teach you things or preach you things, you back it up with this Word. And if they're not in this Word, then you cast that away and you don't accept that. Because this Word is the ultimate truth. It cannot be disproven. It cannot be destroyed. It's going to stand when the world ends. The world's on fire burning. This Word's going to stand. That's what we're going to be judged against. So we have to keep this Word true and close to us, or this world will pull us eventually away. It'll sneak in. It'll creep in. It'll sow weeds. It'll sow thorns, and they'll grow with us and they'll choke us out if we don't keep our hearts pure and our minds pure. And we're going to do that through praying. We're going to do that through reading this Word. We're going to do that by hearing this Word taught and preached. And we're going to do that by being obedient and seeking Him and serving Him with all that we have. And denying this world. And understanding that we have to keep Him first. Some of the greatest, preachers and teachers and workers, musicians and stuff for the Lord that have worked for Him and that people follow them around and say, look at all the wonderful things they've done. The true ones are going to say, I've not done anything of myself, but this is God's blessed me and He's used me and He's worked through me to give Him the glory. So you have to make sure that you're watching out for those people that get too full of pride and get built up of themselves and say, look at all the things I have done. You need to, because look at Christ. All the time they come to Him, He says, this is all but my Father's business. I'm working for Him. Give Him the glory. It's all about my Father, not me. So moving on, the fourth group. But he that receives seed into the good ground is he that heareth the word and understandeth it, and which also beareth fruit and bringeth forth some 100-fold, some 60, some 30. So what it's saying here is that, all right, the people that prepared themselves, they come seeking, they got out all the stones out of their heart, they got out all the weeds and the thorns, they kept themselves pruned up, and they kept seeking and letting the Spirit change them and the Word change them, and they come and had that true experience, and then they started being obedient. They started serving the Lord and started working for Him. And so that's the ones that bear fruit. So again, when you go to look at that, it's like, who's the people that's going to make it? Who's the ones that's going to make it to heaven? It's going to be fruitful. It's going to be there. That's the ones that confess and believe and that are working and being faithful. It's not the ones that just show up because it's Sunday morning, I got to get up and go. And they sit there and they don't ever do anything. They don't ever tell their neighbors. They don't ever tell their friends. They don't ever tell the people in their lives about God and what He's done for them. This is the people that are working for Him, that put Him first, that are obedient. When the Spirit draws them to do something, they go about and do it. They're obedient to Him. This is where the separation comes from, about that sinking into your heart. And that word sinks in your heart, and it changes who you are, and it grows and makes you strong. That's going to be the ones that are going to be able to withstand the trials of this world, the tribulation, and then it's going to grow and produce fruit. And it says, that different ones will have 100, some will have 60, some will have 30-fold fruit. But, we all have different jobs to do. We have different things to do. And how fully sold out we are, the more you do for Him, the more He's going to be able to do through you and with you. The more sold out we are, the more we say yes as soon as He tells us. We don't resist the Spirit. He can use you. And, that doesn't make any of us better or worse than any of the rest of us. But, when we're serving Him, and He can bless us and we can do things. If we're resistant to the Spirit, it's like He's going to stop coming back to you, because if He has to fight you every time that you're doing it, He knows that you're still in this world and you're hanging on to this world. We have to separate ourselves from that and listen to the Holy Ghost when it speaks to us. Listen to this Word when it speaks to us. That still small voice stirs in you and says, hey, I need you to go do this. You don't say, well, why do I need to do that? You're just like, well, okay, I don't understand it, but God wants me to do it, so I'm going to go. That's the kind of worker that He's looking for. And that's going to be that fourth group of people there. The ones that don't fight against the Spirit, that don't fight against the Word, that are obedient and they serve Him and they love Him because they know that whatever He asks us to do, it's going to help somebody else. It's going to open a door. It's going to share the light with somebody else. It's going to fulfill a need somebody else has. And it's going to prove to them that God is real and that He's there. All these little tiny things we do we don't understand. God has an understanding. He has this plan. And sometimes it's better for us not to know what's going on, because we don't need to know everything. We don't need to understand that, because if we start figuring all this out, maybe we'll get full of pride ourselves, or we'll start thinking that we're somebody that we're not really. We're all just sinners that were saved by grace that are working for Him. We're not better off than anybody else as far as what we've done. It's what Christ has done for us. That's what separates us from everybody else. Our souls may be in a better place because of Jesus Christ and His blood and regeneration in the Holy Ghost, but that's the difference. God still loves the worst sinner out there, just like He does us. He wants them to be saved. But when we're obedient to Him, when we go work and produce that fruit, maybe we can reach some of them and turn them to Christ that they can be saved. And that's what He's wanting us to do. And that's what Christ is saying here. It's like the ones that fully sell out, that let the Word sink down into their hearts. They're going to have understanding then. They're going to be changed. He's going to heal us. He's going to fix us. He's going to regenerate us, and He's going to save us. But we have to fully sell out. So when you look at that scenario there, you think about that. There's 4 groups of people there that word sent out to. Only one of the 4 produces fruit. And it says they weren't choked out. They didn't burn up. They didn't just not grow at all. There's only, that's a quarter. That's 25%. So you think about that. If He's talking about the church here, if He's talking about the world, whatever it is, that's a very small number of people that's going to figure this out and be saved. It says that straight is the gate and narrow is the way, and few will find the entrance there. So we have to think about that. We need to make sure we're checking ourselves and that we're there, that we're praying, we're seeking Him, we're being obedient, we're serving Him with everything we got. Because, not everybody that thinks they're making it's going to make it. You have to know that you know, and it has to be in your heart. And if Jesus isn't in your heart, you're not going to make it. So it's more than just a little feeling every now and then. It's a relationship that you have to build with Him. And that's what's going to produce this fruit that He's talking about with this fourth group that received the seed in good ground. They heard the Word. They understood it. They bear fruit. What does that mean? They bear fruit. That means they were working. They were doing something. You can see that there's a difference. There's a change. That God has made a change in them and they're working. They bring forth the fruit, again, 100, 60, 30-fold, whatever it may be, but they're producing fruit. Verse 24, another parable put He forth unto them, saying, the kingdom of heaven is likened unto a man which sowed good seed in his field. But while men slept, his enemy came and sowed tares among the wheat and went his way. So I looked this up to find out exactly what tares were. And basically it was like a weed. It's like a poisonous kind of a weed that when it first starts growing, if it's sowed in with wheat, when it first grows up too, it looks just like wheat when it's starting to grow. And the difference comes when it's fully grown and you can see what the fruit that it is that it bears. So again, we've got a man here that sowed in his field while he slept. His enemy came in and sowed tares in the night while they slept. But when the blade was sprung up and brought forth fruit, then appeared the tares also. So at first, the whole field looked good. The wheat was growing up, the tares was coming in, and it all looked the same, and it all looked good. Everything looked like it was fine. So the servants of the householder came and said unto him, Sir, dost not thou sow good seed in thy field? From whence then have it tares? So when it got matured and it growed up, they started seeing that there was that bad weeds that were in there, that was stuck in there with the wheat. And he's saying, like, what happened here? We thought that you sowed good seed. What's going on here? Why is there bad stuff there? He said unto them, An enemy hath done this. The servant said unto him, Wilt thou then that we go and gather them up? So should we just go tear all those out and tear the tares out? But he said, Nay, lest while ye gather up the tares, ye root up also the wheat with them. Let both grow together until the harvest, and in the time of harvest I will say to the reapers, Gather ye together first the tares, and bind them in bundles to burn them, and gather the wheat into my barn. So the owner of that field there is saying, well, we can't do anything about this now, because if we tear out all these weeds that are grown twisted right up with the wheat, it's like we're going to tear up some of the wheat too. We don't want to destroy that. We have good product here. We have a good harvest. There's good fruit here. So we're just going to have to let it weather the storm. And then when the time comes to harvest, we'll pull out all the weeds and separate all the bad. And then we'll have our harvest of the wheat. So again, when we look at this, if we're talking about the church here, then what's he saying? That what are we saying here? So the church is here, and you've got people that are sitting right next to you. There's people all together in the church. Some of them, they all look good at first. Like everybody comes in, they sound good, they look good, they're doing well, whatever it may be. But as they grow and mature, then you see what kind of fruit they produce. You're going to see that some are producing good fruit. They're growing. They're serving the Lord. They're working. There's going to be others that the enemy has come in and set in place there to cause separation, to cause you to stunt your growth, to cause a negative result of the crop that's growing there in the church. So we've got that here. There's people growing in the church also that Satan's put there to separate. That's why we see there's divisions among church, while there's fighting amongst the church, while there's jealousy and things in the church. That's these tares that the enemy comes in and sows. They don't always pop right up at first. Sometimes it takes years to grow and develop and things like that. And so it's saying here, so what do you do? Well, and this is why a lot of people, you get people that are lost and you try to convince them to come to church, and they say, well, every church I've ever been to is full of hypocrites. I've lived better than most of the people I know that go to church. These are people maybe that have been caught up in these tares. Maybe they're tares themselves. I don't know. But this is what the Word is saying here. So what happens then? Well, we have to wait. And it's going Christ is telling us here that what's happening is that, that the church is going to grow up. This world's going to grow up. There's going to be good. There's going to be bad. It's going to be intertwined with each other. They're going to be there together. We have to separate ourselves as much as we can. But in the end, when He comes back and judgment happens, the angels are going to come and they're going to separate everybody out. They're going to take us. He's going to separate us. And those that are found in the tares, that have been lost, that are broken, that have rejected Christ, they're going to be bound and cast into the fire to burn. And then he's going to harvest His wheat and take them to the barn. That means those that have served Him true, they've had a true heart, that have worked for Him, been obedient, they're going to make it to heaven. And so there's going to be that separation at the time. And some people may think that they're wheat and they're tares. That's you know where your heart is. You know where you stand with God. That's for Him to say, with you. And if you don't know, then you need to pray. Because if you don't know, you're probably not wheat, you're a tare. Because you should know down deep inside your heart where you stand with Him. If you're praying, you're reading this Word, you're hearing it taught, you're seeking Him, you're being obedient to the Spirit, you know whose you are. Deep down inside, you know. But again, He's saying here, that there'll be a time of separation at judgment, when the lost will be separated and the saved will be sent on to heaven, and the lost will be, bundled and sent into the fire. They'll be separated eternally and have that eternal death. Christ goes on again, verse 31. Another parable put he forth unto them, saying, The kingdom of heaven is like to a grain of mustard seed, which a man took and sowed in his field, which indeed is the least of all seeds, but when it is grown, it is the greatest among herbs, and becometh a tree, so that the birds of the air come and lodge in the branches thereof. So here's another one, and he's saying, and at first you think about that, you're like, well, okay, we hear about the grain of a mustard seed. If we have that kind of faith, we can move mountains. So it's saying that the mustard seed is one of the tiniest seeds there is, but when it grows and matures, it can grow into this great big tree, even so much that birds can rest there, and it's this mighty tree. It starts off small and it looks great and big. Well, at first, when you think about that, that's the church. Well, we have that small faith, it'll grow and it'll be large, and the people can find refuge in it. They can come and all these things, and it grows in this wonderful big tree. But I was looking at my cross-reference notes here in this, and every time in the Old Testament they talked about a tree growing to be mighty and big, and it gave shade, and the animals rested under it, and the birds came and made nests in it, or whatever it was. It was talking about a kingdom of men, and their pride grew in that tree, and they thought they were bigger than what they were. And God comes and takes branches out of that tree and takes the good out of the tree. Then he cuts down the tree, and he destroys the tree, and there's the stump left. But he takes the good out of the tree and plants it somewhere else, and then it grows and it becomes pure. So he's talking about again here, just like we were talking about in the parable before, where the seed was sown with the wheat in good field. The enemy snuck in and stuck tares down in the ground and sowed that, and it come up and it messed up the field and the harvest. Well, this is the same thing here with this. The church may grow and it may look good, but there's going to be bad there. But God knows, and he's going to separate it. So we have to make sure that as we're growing, as we're maturing, as we're moving forward, that we stay in this word. We stay true. To where when he comes and separates the good and the bad, that he's going to take us with the good and plant us in that kingdom, the new kingdom that's coming. And we're going to be in heaven with him and not separated like the rest. Verse 33. Another parable spake he unto them. The kingdom of heaven is like unto leaven, which a woman took and hid in 3 measures of meal till the whole was leavened. So again, he's talking about this, and it's like, if you've done any kind of baking or whatever it is, you put any kind of leavening agent into a bread, like yeast or whatever, just a little bit will cause that bread to rise and lift up, and it'll puff up and it'll swell and get big. That's what the leaven does with that. What you think, you want your bread to be nice and thick and plump, whatever it is. But again, when we go back and we look in the Old Testament, everywhere that it talks about leaven, it talks about that it was something that came in that was evil, and it tampered with what the true nature of the bread was in the first place, and it changed it. Just a little bit of leaven will leaven the whole loaf. So again, Christ is speaking to us, and he's telling us again, saying, beware. Beware of your heart, beware of your life, of your family, of your section of my church, wherever you are, to make sure you watch what comes in and what's being taught, what's being preached, what's being sung, what's being done within your church, because just a little bit of evil will come in, and it can swell, it can grow, and it can swell up. And of course, when we talk about swelling up and growing like that, it's pride. Pride and evil and darkness, and it'll defeat what's trying to be accomplished and what's trying to be done by the Lord. So he's warning us again. We have to be very careful about what's going on, what we hear, what we see, what we watch, what we believe, how we live, what we speak. We have to watch these things, because just a little bit of evil can get in. And if it creeps in and it stays there, it can take root. It can become bitter. It can make us hard. It can make us, it can turn us right back to where we were. That we have to be careful about the things that are going on in our lives around us, and what we see, what we watch, what we listen to, what we believe, what we accept. This world is going to try to tell us there's no hope, but we know there's hope. We know there's hope in Jesus Christ. Is everything going to be all nice and easy and a bed of roses? Absolutely not. Even roses have thorns, right? So we have to understand that, but we have to keep fighting the good fight. And we're going to do that by praying, by reading the Word, by hearing it taught, by hearing it preached. We're going to be out there being obedient to Him, Obedience is better than sacrifice. It's been everywhere we go. Everybody that what we know keeps talking about, teachers and preachers. Everybody keeps talking about obedience. Obedience. That's coming out now because we need to be moving. We need to be working because the time is coming. Christ talked about the harvest. We've been talking about that all morning so far. That he said that the harvest is ready and ripe, but the laborers are few. Well, that's even so more true now than it was then. We need to be out there. We need to be working. We need to be drawing people in and turning them away from this world and pointing them to Jesus Christ. All these things spake Jesus unto the multitude in parables, and without a parable spoke he not unto them, that it might be fulfilled which was spoken by the prophet, saying, I will open my mouth in parables, I will utter things which have been kept secret from the foundation of the world. So again, the people that weren't ready to receive the whole truth, he spoke to them in parables. He gave them away. He gave them just a little bit of a piece of that to where they could seek him if their heart truly wanted. Because if they heard those parables and didn't understand, and they prayed for understanding and they sought for him, they would find him. He says, if you seek, you'll find. If you knock, I'll open. So that was the people. He was giving them just enough that they could be saved, that they could accept him but they had to have their heart in the right place. They had to seek him and find him. It's like it's not just an instantaneous thing that's only done one time. When you're the conviction of the Holy Spirit comes on you and you go pray repentance and you seek out Jesus, then that's a life-changing moment and you are saved right then, absolutely. But to continue on that path to grow and mature, for that seed to find a good ground and not lose its root or not to be filled up with tares or whatever it may be, you have to continue to seek him, be obedient to him and grow and mature and seek that living water every single day and find him and feed yourself with this word and grow till you'll be strong and let him grow in your heart so that you can be converted and you can be saved and you can stay that way and you can make it. We have to walk in obedience. It's not just a quick little prayer you uttered once and then you're good for the rest of your life. That's not how that works. There has to be a growth process. There's a change. There's a maturing. There's work to be done. There's fruit to bear. The Bible says over and over again that, the tree that doesn't bear fruit, or if it bears bad fruit, it's going to be hewn down and cast into the fire. So, we have to keep seeking him every day. Just like Joshua said, for me and my house, we'll serve the Lord. You get up every single morning and do that. You make that choice every day to keep following him, to keep searching out and growing that relationship with your heart with Jesus. Then Jesus sent the multitude away and went into the house, and his disciples came unto him, saying, Declare unto us the parable of the tares of the field. He answered and said unto them, He that soweth the good seed is the Son of Man. The field is the world, the good seed are the children of the kingdom, but the tares are the children of the wicked one. The enemy that sowed them is the devil. The harvest is the end of the world, and the reapers are the angels. I explained that a little bit earlier, but I'd already read ahead because I studied, so I knew. So what he's saying here again is that Jesus was that sower. He came, and this world is that field, and he sowed the good seed. And that seed that stuck in, that's anchored down and went to him to be watered and to have the sun shine on them and the light to grow. It's like that's the children of God. That's the kingdom. The tares are the children of the wicked one. That's the ones that are the hypocrites, the false ones, those that have always rejected, that never received Christ. And those are the tares. And so the enemy sowed those and put them there. And he's saying, and the harvest is the end of the world, and the reapers are the angels. And he's saying, that's going to come to pass when it happens. And where you're at is where you are. If you're wheat and you're producing good fruit, you're going to be fine. But if you're one of the tares, you're going to be cut down and burned. As therefore the tares are gathered and burned in the fire, so shall it be in the end of the world. The Son of Man shall send forth his angels, and they shall gather out of his kingdom all things that offend, and them which do iniquity. So again, he's saying that the angels are going to come, they're going to separate, and those that have been offensive to the kingdom, those that they're in iniquity, they're in sin, they're in darkness and rebellion, that they've not been obedient and accepted Christ and been washed in the blood and been reborn, and they've not served and worked and brought forth fruit, they're going to be separated. And verse 42, and shall cast them into a furnace of fire. there shall be wailing and gnashing of teeth. It doesn't sound like anything that would be any kind of interest of anybody would want to do, would it? To be cast into a fire and burnt, and there's wailing and gnashing of teeth. Well, that's what comes to those that live in rebellion and rejection. Then shall the righteous shine forth as the sun in the kingdom of their Father. Who hath ears to hear, let him hear. So again, he's saying, but those that served him, that have obeyed him, that walked in obedience, and they've loved him with their whole heart, and they've had that relationship with Christ, will be saved, and it says, the righteous shall shine forth as the sun in the kingdom of their Father. That means we'll be in God's presence forever, worshiping and praising and lifting up his name and worshiping Christ and being in the Spirit. And there's going to be happiness and joy and peace, all that good things that are there. 44, again, the kingdom of heaven is like unto treasure hid in a field, the which when a man hath found, he hideth, for the joy thereof goeth and selleth all that he hath, and buyeth that field. So we can look at this and we can say, well, it's like when we find God, we find that we're going to sell out all of this world that we have, and we're going to go and we're going to fully sell out and give ourselves over to God. When I was looking at this again, and looking at the cross references and some things, and people that have studied this, years ago, mightier men than me have deeper understanding. There's also an understanding of this, that Christ was that man that came here to this earth and found us here. And that he went and gave all that he had to buy us. That it was him on the cross giving his life for us, shedding that blood that he could save us and buy us. Because he came and he gave everything that he had, including his very life's blood, for us to buy us. And so that's the understanding there too, that he's saying again, that if you're going to receive the kingdom of heaven, you got to go through Christ. It's going to have to be him. And you're going to have to pick up your cross and sell out to this world and sell up all these things of this earth and put all these things of the world behind you and put God before you. He has to be first. Verse 45. Again, the kingdom of heaven is like unto a merchant man seeking goodly pearls, who when he had found one pearl of great price, went and sold all that he had and bought it. So again, Christ was here. He's looking. He's wanting to find us. We're his pearls. We're his treasure. And he sold everything that he had. He gave up heaven to come here. He gave up his very life's blood. He went to that cross. They beat him. They spit in his face. They smacked him. They beat him to where, they took a whip to him and destroyed his body before he ever went to that cross. But he gave up everything and paid a great price for us because he wanted us. He wanted to save us. He wanted to love us, and that's how much he loved us. Again, the kingdom of heaven is like unto a net that was cast into the sea and gathered of every kind, which, when it was full, they drew to shore and sat down and gathered the good into vessels, but cast the bad away. So again, that's a parable about fishing. The net goes out, it brings in everything. But then at the judgment time comes, everything's going to be separated out. The good is going to be on one side, the bad's going to be in the other. And you say, well, what about the middle ground? Those that kind of are a little bit good, a little bit bad. If there's any bad found, you're going to be cast away with the bad. That puring of the maturing and the cleansing of that blood is going to make you completely clean when you stay with him and you follow him and you walk in that obedience. So shall it be at the end of the world, the angels shall come forth and sever the wicked from among the just, and shall cast them into the furnace of fire. There shall be wailing and gnashing of teeth. So again, he's talking to us again, saying it's going to be a bad time if you're lost and you've rejected Christ and you didn't let him sink into your heart. You didn't fully grab onto him. You didn't serve him. You weren't obedient. Jesus saith unto them, Have ye understood all these things? They say unto him, Yea, Lord. Then said he unto them, Therefore every scribe which is instructed unto the kingdom of heaven is like unto a man that is a householder, which bringeth forth out of his treasure things new and old. So he's telling us there, it's like if we understand and we know, we have that relationship with him, we need to be out there. We need to be telling others. We need to make sure that those that are in our house are walking in order, that we've taught them, we've shown them, we've shared Christ with them, that people around us we're telling all these things, and we know, we're telling all the new, we're telling all the old. We're passing this along and sharing with all those that we can. Verse 53. And it came to pass that when Jesus had finished these parables, he departed thence. And when he was come into his own country, he taught them in their synagogue, insomuch that they were astonished, and said, Whence hath this man this wisdom and these mighty works? Is not this the carpenter's son? Is not his mother called Mary, and his brethren James and Joses and Simon and Judas? And his sisters, are they not all with us? Whence then hath this man all these things? And they were offended in him. But Jesus said unto them, A prophet is not without honor, save in his own country and his own house. And he did not many mighty things, and he did not many mighty works there because of their unbelief. So Jesus went back basically to where he was from, to where the people knew him, where he grew up. And they rejected him doing all these things because they couldn't get past that, hey, we grew up with him. He was one of us. How can it be possible that he's doing all these things? He's Mary's son. We know his brothers. We know his sisters. And they didn't do that. And that's the thing in this world too. You understand that people that knew you before you were converted, before you were saved, people that knew you in your past life before you were born again, some of those people may reject you because they think that they're who you still used to be. And Christ said, a prophet is not without honor, save in his own country and his own house. The people that know you the best may be the hardest people for you to reach because maybe they saw you at your worst. Maybe they saw you at being, who you were and average and normal before Christ saved you, before the Spirit filled you and God, sanctified you and started using you to do his work. So a lot of people are going to reject you because they think they know who you are. But of course they don't, because you're somebody new now. You were reborn. You're regenerated. You're a whole new person when you went through this process of being washed in the blood after repenting and being regenerated, made new in the Holy Ghost. You're a new person. And of course Christ, he hadn't come into his own growing up, of course, yet, and he hadn't moved on to his teaching and his ministry yet. So they saw him as an average guy. They didn't know any different from this guy. But so they refused and rejected him. We don't need to be that way. We need to understand that God can save anybody that he draws and they accept him, and that he can use anybody to do anything that he wants because he's God. He made a shepherd boy the runt of his brothers. They made him a king. That was King David. He was the runt of his brothers. He was a shepherd, and nobody thought he was ever going to be anything. And God made him a king. There's so many accounts through the Bible of stories about how God just picked an average, ordinary person and did great things with them because they walked in obedience. They accepted him and walked in obedience. And again, that's the key here, is like to walk in obedience and obey what God asks you to do. So then you'll be one of the blessed, and you'll bring forth fruit. You'll be saved, and everything's going to be fine. You can help others to do the same. So we'll stop there this morning. But again, walk in obedience.